Good evening. I would like to welcome each and every one of you to our annual Baltimore City Board of Estimates Taxpayers Night. In an effort to balance public safety and public participation in your municipal government, the board is hosting this meeting tonight in a hybrid format. For those who are attending today in City Hall, I ask that you please take a moment to ensure that your electronic devices are turned off or at a minimum placed on silence to ensure that you do not disrupt tonight's proceedings. I would like to thank the staff of the Budget Office, as well as the Council President's Office, the Mayor's Office, and Comptroller's Office, and my fellow members on the Board of Estimates for planning today's event. Taxpayers Night is an important part of the budget process for Baltimore City. The purpose of this event is to provide the public with an opportunity to comment on the preliminary budget for this fiscal year 2025 that was recommended to the Board of Estimates by the Department of Finance earlier this month and provided us a presentation in front of the city at today's BOE meeting. I would like to note at the top that while those testifying may at times be passionate, we expect that members of the board and members of the public will keep order and ensure that everyone has the opportunity to be heard. That's the point of tonight. Persons who are disruptive may be asked to leave the meeting or ejected from the meeting because we have to keep decorum and order here in City Hall. Our agenda for this evening is pretty straightforward. Shortly, I'll introduce the Bureau of Budget and Management Research. They will come and provide us with a brief presentation of the highlights of the preliminary budget. Following that, I will give instructions on how the public will proceed. Then we'll open up the floor and hear from members of the public here today. Before I turn it over to BBMR, I would also like to introduce members of the Board of Estimates, again, to the general public. I'm your City Council President, Nick J. Mosby. To my left is your Mayor, Mayor Brandon M. Scott. To my right is your Comptroller, Bill Henry. To his right is Director of DPW, Khalil Zaid. And to the mayor's left is the Deputy Solicitor, Michael Strawsbury. Stephen Strawsbury. I said Michael. Sorry about that, Stephen. At this time, I'd like to welcome our amazing CFO. Is he here today, or is someone going to present for him? Would you like to come speak, Mr. CFO, or no? No? All right, your director's going to come up. Madam Director, you can take us away from here. So at this time, we're just going to give it to Finance. Madam Director, it's your show, so if you want to call someone else up or you don't have to defer back to the board, we'll give it completely over to you. Hold on.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Madam Director, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Good evening, Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Comptroller, members of the Board of Estimates, members of the public. Thank you very much for being here tonight. My name is Laura Larson. I'm the city's budget director. I'm here to provide a high-level overview of the recommendations that are reflected in the fiscal 25 preliminary budget. After I walk through highlights on the operating budget, I'll turn it over to my colleagues in the planning department to give highlights on the proposed capital budget. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the timing of the release of the preliminary budget with the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. When the bridge collapsed, work on the preliminary budget had been finalized, and meaning that there are no recommendations in the preliminary budget that reflect either additional services that will be provided as a part of the response and recovery efforts, or changes to revenue that might be impacted as a result of the collapse. We do want to note that the city is continuing to track these costs and to look for different ways to react to the ongoing situation in terms of providing services to our residents as part of the recovery effort. And we continue to closely monitor how the collapse of the bridge and the closure of the port are impacting the overall economy in our community. In terms of some high-level highlights regarding the preliminary budget, the preliminary spending plan balances a $107 million shortfall through various agency savings, new efficiencies, and reducing long-term liabilities. The budget is nearly sustainably balanced with no use of fund balance. There are a series of targeted investments in the preliminary budget, specifically violence prevention, implementing the consent decree, putting funding towards the Vacants Initiative, as well as making investments in climate action and supporting the procurement transformation effort. The preliminary spending plan begins to prepare for the sunsetting of the ARPA program that has provided pivotal funding to help the city emerge from the pandemic. With that, the budget is still impacted by inflation, and we are still continuing to see how that is impacting our operating costs, specifically in the area of employee wages and labor contracts. And finally, the budget sustains the city's investment in local schools. In the 3 years since the implementation of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, the city's contribution for city schools is up by 47.6%. In terms of the numbers, the overall recommended budget is $4.06 billion. That's $296.8 million, or 6.8% lower than the fiscal '24 adopted budget. The general fund budget is $2.327 billion, or $111 million higher than the fiscal '24 budget, or 5%. The overall position count is down by 172 positions, or just under 2%. Now, in terms of how we balance the fiscal '25 budget, we began the planning process with a projected shortfall of $107 million. Now, following that initial projection, we did get updated information that broke in the city's favor in terms of helping to reduce that deficit. The first item was relating to the city's property tax assessments. When we received the final property tax reassessment information for Group 3, we realized that we would be recognizing an additional $9.5 million in property tax revenue above what had been previously assumed in our forecast. And the second major item was regarding the schools formulas. Initially, we had projected that city schools costs would grow by another $15 million next year, but when we received the updated state funding formula, we saw that the funding level was remaining flat, and that was an improvement of our forecast of $18.2 million. We're also realizing additional revenue from investment earnings, and that is the product of higher interest rates plus having higher cash on hand, as well as higher income tax receipts. Those revised assumptions helped to improve the overall outlook and reduced our initial shortfall from $107 million to just under $62 million. So from there, the remainder of the budget was balanced through a number of initiatives that are focused both on revenue as well as various expenditure adjustments. First up, the preliminary plan includes various initiatives focused on reforms to our parking revenue that are projected to generate an additional $6.2 million in revenue. Additionally, the Department of Finance will review existing fines and fees to identify areas where fee structures have not kept pace with the cost of providing services, and we believe that the reforms to those items will generate an additional $1 million in revenue. We also identified savings in the city's other post-employment benefits. We were previously having to make catch-up payments into that legacy system, but that fund is now fully funded, and so we were able to save $17.6 million. City agencies identified a number of long-term vacant positions that will save the city $13.3 million annually. On top of position savings, city agencies also identified $20 million in recurring savings that will be recognized through efficiencies, again, with no impact to city services. The budget does include investments. First up, to begin transitioning high priority programs that are currently funded through ARPA. And then another $4.1 million for various enhancements for things like violence prevention, climate action, other priority items that I just mentioned. So again, those actions in total balance the remainder of the $61.9 million shortfall the city faced. Throughout the development of the fiscal 25 budget, we held multiple forums for the community to provide feedback and insights regarding the fiscal 25 budget. There were 2 in-person forums as well as multiple virtual forums. We stood up a new newsletter where residents can receive regular updates on what's happening with the city's budget, and we continue to look for ways that we can engage the community and participate in an ongoing conversation around the budget in order to incorporate their feedback. In terms of where the money comes from in the city's budget, this chart shows the general revenue sources broken out by source. Again, the general fund, the fiscal 25 recommended general fund is $2.3 billion. Property taxes continue to represent just shy of 50% of the city's general fund revenue, followed by income tax and then highway user revenue. In terms of where the money goes, the general fund is the city's largest fund, making up about 66% of the total budget, followed by enterprise and utility funds that represent just under 19%, and then finally grant funds that is comprised of state and federal awards. In terms of the operating budget, the largest expenditure is personnel costs, followed by contractual services. We continue our practice of presenting the operating budget by pillar, and these are the pillars that are reflected in Mayor Scott's action plan. So when we look at the general fund in terms of how it's being allocated by pillar, you can see that building public safety has the highest allocation, followed by prioritizing our youth, and then clean and healthy communities. Just highlighting a couple of significant changes on the revenue and expenditure side. So I mentioned earlier, property tax assumptions improved in our initial forecast. That revenue overall is projected to increase by 6.7% or $64 million. This is the 11th consecutive year of growth in assessment increases and reflects the new assessments for Group 3, which is the southern portion of our city. Revenue from transfer and recordation taxes is projected to decline by $4.8 million or 4.9%. This decline reflects the real estate market normalizing after record years that we saw in fiscal 21 and fiscal 22. The good news here is that while the number of transactions is down, the value of those transactions is continuing to remain high, holding the appreciation value that we saw in previous years. Income tax is projected to increase by $18.9 million or 4.2%. This is an ongoing sign of the strength of the city's labor market. In calendar year 2003, local unemployment was 2.9%. That's the lowest that we have seen since 1990. And then finally, investment earnings are projected to increase by $15.6 million or just under 60%. And this is a reflection of the high interest rates as well as higher cash on hand balances. In terms of major expenditure highlights, as I mentioned, the budget continues the increased investment for city schools under the funding framework established by the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. The budget also includes funding for 56 career coaches to support middle school and high school career coaching programs in city schools. And then finally, 240 year-round spots through the Youth Works program, as well as continuing funding for the traditional summer program. In building public safety, there's funding to expand the group violence reduction strategy to 2 additional police districts, as well as making continued investments in civilianization within the police department in line with recommendations under the consent decree. In clean and healthy communities, the budget annualizes funding for 10 solid waste crews that were created in the fiscal 24 budget in order to sustain weekly recycling, as well as making investments in a building automation system that will help to reduce the city's energy footprint. In equitable neighborhood development, there's additional staffing to support the vacancy plan in the Department of Housing and Community Development. And finally, in responsible stewardship of city resources, there's continuation of funding for various hiring incentives in order to staff up hard-to-fill classifications, and includes funding to support purchasing electrical vehicle charger hubs to help the transition to electric vehicles. In terms of other funds, the utility budgets, which include water, wastewater, and stormwater, are projected to increase by just over 12%. This increase is driven by higher staff costs as well as higher contractual and supply costs that are really driven by inflationary cost pressure. Grant budgets are down by 34.5%. This is not a reflection of a loss of grant funding to the city. Instead, this is a more accurate depiction of what the city anticipates receiving in terms of state, federal, and special awards in fiscal 25. This is driven by a change in budgeting practice, and again, is not indicative of a loss of grant funds. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleagues from the planning department to walk through the capital budget.
Good evening, President, Mayor, Controller, members of the board. My name is Chris Ryer. I'm the Director of Planning for the City of Baltimore. And as you know, the city charter requires the Planning Commission to make recommendations for a 6-year capital improvement program, the first year of which becomes the city capital budget for the upcoming year. The remaining 5 years act as a guide for future capital projects. Per your guidance, a capital project is a physical betterment or improvement costing more than $50,000, as well as any associated studies, but it does not typically include vehicular equipment, repairs and maintenance, or salaries for positions that are not part of the project. So the Planning Commission recommends a new 6-year capital program every year. Starting in late September, the planning works with the participating 8 city agencies to solicit project requests, prioritize their projects for funding, and prepare the 6-year plan. This chart shows the fund sources included in the capital budget. The majority of the capital budget is made up of restricted fund sources. That's very important. Only the green tone pieces of the pie here represent discretionary funding sources. For example, more than half of the fiscal year 25 capital budget is fund sources dedicated to water, wastewater, and stormwater utilities. Those are the blue on the pie chart. These funds are generated for this purpose through the water bills and can only be used for this purpose. Another substantial portion of the capital budget is state and federal funds, shown in gold here, which are also restricted. For example, federal highway funds have to be used for transportation projects, and state open space funds have to be used for park projects. Highway user revenue in red is also restricted to transportation projects. The only flexible source of funds for general funds and general obligation bonds, shown in green. As you can see, these are a relatively small portion of the capital budget that have to be used very strategically to improve our most important needs. This chart shows the breakdown of the preliminary FY25 capital budget by agency. Water and wastewater funds make up the largest share of the budget, and they are entirely funded with utility funds. Transportation is the next largest capital budget, and their budget is made up of a combination of highway user funds and federal funds. Agencies like General Services, which is responsible for most municipal buildings, such as every fire station, every police station, health centers, community action centers, even the downtown campus. They are solely reliant on local funds. If you're interested, if the public is interested in more detail about the capital budget, they can go to planning.baltimorecity.gov, click on the Capital Improvement Program link, and you will see every detail of every capital budget back to 2008, I believe. Just to highlight a couple of projects in this year's capital budget, $10 million, 10.6, to consolidate tax management throughout the city and modernize the existing tax system. That should relieve a burden on the public. $2.9 million to renovate the Forest Park Library branch, $19 million for school building upgrades. This is in addition to the state capital budget for schools, as well as the 21st Century initiative. $3.5 million for Florence Cummings Park in Westport, 3.75 for North Hartford Park, and 2.2 for City Springs Park, $10 million of highway user revenue to begin the Hanover Street Bridge project. And I got a few more here. 4 million, roughly 4 million for sidewalk improvements, 6.5 for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, 14 roughly for water main replacements in Yale Heights and that general vicinity, 4 million for improvements to the Pennsylvania Avenue commercial corridor, and 10.8 for the Middle Branch resiliency project. That ends my presentation on the capital budget for FY25. Be happy to take questions later.
Thank you, Madam Director. Mr. Again, we had an opportunity to hear directly from BBMR as well as planning and other members of the Finance Department this morning at our regularly scheduled BOE meeting. Now, after we have commenced the part of the administration presenting the preliminary budget to the general public at this Taxpayers Night, now it's time for us to go into the segment in which this is critically important, and while we're all here, the reason for us gathering tonight is, again, to allow the public to provide the Board of Estimates any comments, any concerns, any questions, any suggestions associated with the preliminary budget. Again, this is our opportunity to hear from you, the residents of Baltimore, and it's your opportunity to bring those concerns directly to your officials in government. If you have signed up online in advance of tonight's meeting, and you're testifying virtually, you'll be recognized by the chair. You'll be unmuted by the moderator, and we ask you then to begin to speak. All members of the general public will be given 2 minutes to provide their testimony tonight. For those who are with us in person, please ensure that you've signed up outside. I have a list of all members that have signed up outside. If you have not signed up but you intend to participate by giving a presentation, by giving testimony, please do so at this time. We're going to ask that you again speak clearly into the microphone so the interpreters can understand and hear you, as well as those watching from home from WebEx can hear your remarks. Again, just like I said, for the folks that will be presenting to us virtually, we will give you 2 minutes. Now, the purpose of tonight's evening, the purpose of us to be here tonight is for us to listen to you. There's not an intention of us going back and forth or agencies asking specific questions. If you do have questions, you can present those questions. The board will take those questions down, and we will figure out a way to communicate the answers back to you. Now, there might be times where a board member might ask you to clarify yourself or ask additional questions to provide some clarity in your testimony as it relates to your questions and concerns to the board. A couple brief suggestions. Again, please state your first and your last name as well as any affiliations before you begin to speak. Speak slowly and clearly, but again, you have 2 minutes to speak. And when you're not speaking, please ensure you are mute for those that are with us on virtually, and for those that are in the audience, please ensure that you respect the folks that have the attention of the board because they're the ones that have been called up to present in front of us. If you wish to address the board but are not able to speak here tonight, you may submit written testimony by email to testimony@baltimorecity.gov. That's testimony@baltimorecity.gov. And you can also, if you do not have access to a computer or you would just like to verbally communicate your testimony, you can also leave a voicemail at 410-396-7873. That's 410-396-7073. At this time, we're going to begin. I'm going to start calling the first names of the folks who've signed up in person. It is my understanding that everybody in here who wants to testify is signed up outside. Is that accurate? If not, raise your hand if you have not done so yet. All right. So the first name I have is Ms. Nicole Fabricant from South Baltimore Community Land Trust.
Hello, good evening. I'm a taxpayer, an organizer, a voter in Baltimore City. I'm here to say that the budget must be used for community wealth building. Our city matters, and community-based brick and mortar matters. Nicole Fabricant, I'm a co-founding member of South Baltimore Community Land Trust. I also teach anthropology at Towson University. I'm here to say we cannot support the budget as it is. We're a coalition of movements across the city who launched a campaign advocating for the creation of Community Wealth Building Fund. This would address chronic disinvestment in Black neighborhoods in Baltimore and help create an inclusive, sustainable economy. We have a new vision for Baltimore. The With Us For Us campaign seeks to create this wealth through an amendment to the Baltimore City Charter. To fuel the fund, we're calling for tax-exempt hospitals and universities to make higher pilot payments in lieu of taxes to the city. Baltimore currently has a pilot agreement with 15 hospitals and universities that allow them to pay a sum of $6 million per year of the $110 million they would otherwise pay in property taxes. It's well beyond time for anchor institutions, for eds and meds, to pay their fair share to the city of Baltimore. We're demanding that 25% of assessed property tax value creates a community wealth fund to invest in Black butterfly communities. Policing, more policing, $590 million for policing is not the answer. Research has shown that in most municipalities, they're disproportionately funding police. $594 million for the fiscal year. This is more than last year, and we've seen it increase every single year. Let's finally address the root problems here, not continue to put Band-Aids. If we get capital investments from eds and meds, we can actually see community-led and community-controlled development. People in Poppleton don't want private New York City developers coming in and displacing their community. Curtis Bay does not want more toxic industries in their community. They want zero waste infrastructure. They want green investments. We stand together tonight in solidarity and demand that the city council—
Please begin to wrap up.
Okay, Mayor Brandon Scott and Board of Estimates finally address the systemic and historic problems of capital denial. Let's tax our eds and meds and begin revitalizing Black butterfly neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Fabricant. Before we move on to the next person that signed up, I'd like to recognize we have Councilwoman Felicia Porter here joining us tonight from the 10th District. Thank you so much for participating in tonight's hearing. Next up, we have Dwayne Davis.
Oh, I said shorty.
You have 2 minutes.
All right, I'm gonna use this 2 minutes real good. All right. I'm a Baltimore City resident. I pay taxes. I'm a ownership. I own Shorty's Underground Ribs. See that? That's a business license from 1998. That's how long I've been owning my business. I gave your controller, Mr. Henry, some legal material over a month ago, and Mr. Henry ain't answered that. All right? And it's about taxes. All right? Taxes that the state owe me. Mayor Brandon Scott, you got legal material. Your man right there made copies of it. You ain't answered that. And that paperwork is forged checks that the state accepted and ain't paid me for. The Baltimore City. I run a business. I'm a business owner. I'm a pit master and a barbecue man. I feed the city. And the city ain't rectified that situation in over 15 years. I come to Taxpayers Night every year. We do the same thing every year. I do the same thing every year, and we want change. This corruption that's going on, that ain't on the agenda. But y'all stealing from the people, and you denying us our rights. Taxation without representation is a denial of my constitutional right. City, county, state, and federal levels. You as the executive branch of this government supposed to answer that. You as my controller supposed to do something about that. Calling me shorty and blowing me off and calling the police on me, man, that don't matter to me. I want what belongs to me. You work for me, I don't work for you. You got this like an irrational fraction. You got a numerator and a denominator. You're the numerator. The people are the denominator. You got to flip like we work for you and you don't work for us. Y'all need to get that straight. Now, Mr. Mosby been knowing about this since 2014. We talking about voter suppression. I work for the Baltimore block. I work for Out for Justice. And y'all denying us, ex-felons, the right to vote and representing us as tax-paying citizens. We served our time. Time for y'all to serve us. Mike! Check! Can you hear me now?
Thank you so much, Mr. Shorty Davis.
Did you hear me?
Next up, we have Julia Fernandez. You have 2 minutes, Ms. Fernandez.
Thank you. Hello and good evening. My name is Ms. Julia Fernandez. I am a Garifuna immigrant from Honduras, Central America, and a proud Baltimore City resident, a mother, a grandmother, and I am a member of CASA. As a Baltimore City resident and a volunteer with U.S. for U.S. campaign with CASA, we seek to create a community wealth building fund through an amendment to the Baltimore City Charter to fuel the funds that are calling for tax exemption hospitals and universities to make higher pilot contribution to the city. Baltimore City currently has a pilot agreement with 15 hospitals and universities that allow them to pay a sum of $6 million per year of the $110 million that are would otherwise own in property taxes. Has well beyond time for anchor institutions to pay their fair share to the city of Baltimore. Baltimore City has prioritized the voices of private developers over the voice of community members like myself, with very little avenues for us to build power and wealth. The Key Bridge collapses demonstrate the importance of our Latino workers in the city, and it is time we make systemic investment in protecting workers. Community wealth building initiatives can build power among low wages and immigrant workers and advance systemic changes to stabilize low-income immigrants communities and communities of colors. As a member of CASA, we see the necessities of our community and how much we work.
Ms. Fernandez, if you could wrap it up.
Okay, yes. After living in the United States of America over 40 years, I just became a citizen, and I will be voting for the first time.
Congratulations, Ms. Fernandez. Next up, we have Dr. Marvin Cheatham.
What's up, Doc?
Take your time, Doc.
Get up. You gotta get up.
I was doing good until I went to New York Friday and fell in front of the hotel there. I was doing pretty good. Good evening. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very honored to be here. I am Dr. Marvin Cheatham, a 73-year life member, resident in Baltimore City. My question to you this evening is, don't Black youth lives matter? Don't Black youth lives matter? 5 years ago, two communities, Hampden and Matthew Henson, two totally diverse communities, came together and put together a plan to create the first predominantly Black skateboard park in the state of Maryland. You allowed Senator Antonio Hayes to lie and say that our community had not approved of a skateboard park. It's documented in a city document that it's September the 30th, 2020. It documents that our community voted for it. We went even further. We tried to give him, and I'm glad to say that the Baltimore Brew took a picture of us trying to hand him 250 residents signing a document that lived within two and a half blocks. We have gone so far, and now you're saying that after you've approved it, this Board of Estimates approved the funding to bring a skateboard park. The first skateboard park are predominantly black in the state of Maryland. The number one skateboarder in the world is a black man. His name is Nigel Houston. If our kids see someone that looks like them, it will be the same experience as Arthur Ashe. When he came in, our kids understood that they could do it. And all we are saying is go back, look at your records. You approved of this. And we should now allow a senator to stop what you had already approved, board. We can't ask for more. I'll close with this. These kids know what y'all have done to them. It's no accident that we are the only district, and I see the commissioner here of the police, we're the only district where homicides went up 28%, folks. Went up 31 in 2022, 41 in last year. Our homicides went up. It's no accident what happened in Mondawmin. It's no accident. We tried to tell this board and the state's attorney that crime was going up because we knew in November you had 20 kids meeting every day talking about what they're going to do and carjacking your
Doc,
neighborhood.
if you could wrap up.
So please, folks, go back and look at this board's approval of a skateboard park. And I'm saying these kids know what you have done to them, and they're retaliating.
Thank you, Doc. Next up, the amazing Kim Trueheart.
You're amazing. All right. The amazing Kim Trueheart. Remember you said that.
We're not dating today. We got the same.
Y'all ain't dating?
Yeah, dressed alike. What's going on?
Y'all done broke Kim's heart.
This is a Western outfit.
Western
all right?
Doves. Okay.
A Western dove.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
We didn't know Doc went to Western. Joking.
Yeah, we let them in, you know.
That's pretty funny. That's good.
Every year I come here and I talk about a different issue. And this year it's more important than last year's, which was chronic absenteeism. You did something. I thank you for what you did. This year, your budget is absent a category, and that's thriving communities. Our neighborhoods need help to thrive. You got them clean and healthy, and you're working on those two things, but add thriving. And do that by creating a capital fund, budgeting money to improve our communities beyond what housing is doing. We have cultural centers. We have neighborhood centers. We have community centers that have been neglected for decades. And I think it is incumbent upon you to start thriving communities as a capital funding program. You need to really allocate some money. I appreciate that you've increased the capital funding amounts to include how much you're borrowing from 80 million to 125 million. I'm asking, put aside 3% of that. Escalate it. You can do 1% this year, you can do 2 and 3, and then we'll evaluate whether it needs to go up more. But I really think you're deficient if you don't create a budget category for thriving communities. Our facilities are lacking. They need improvement. They need investment. You know, I went through a budget exercise with our brother on the end, and he said, allocate the money. So I allocated it. I ain't put any money in the police budget. I put all of it in community development because that's where it needs to be. And I'm really imploring you to adjust your budget and think about thriving communities.
Thank you, Ms. Trueheart. Next up, we have the famous Dr. Lawrence Brown.
It's always great to follow all of Baltimore's legends. To all of you that are here today, elected officials and folks who are in office, first of all, I want to say, Mayor, I think you're doing something brave. You flattened the curve on police spending. And then, according to the budget numbers that I'm reading here, you're actually proposing a 1.3 million decrease in police spending. And I think that's particularly good. I encourage you to go actually further, and I think you can, because with the decrease in violence, you're actually showing that, hey, all of this budget toward the police is not necessarily the factor. I appreciate the fact that with the COVID recovery money drying up, that's creating challenges for our fiscal situation. And I appreciate that you allocated $50 million toward MONSE and violence reduction. So I think the challenge going forward is, can we reduce incrementally our police budget, maybe $20 million a year over the next 4 years, and let's see if we can actually increase that amount or keep that funding going for violence reduction. The other thing is, I agree with us, for us, working with their work, incredible work. Let's see if we can get our private eds and meds to contribute more as well, and be a part of making Black neighborhoods matter. I think what we can do, again, let's do it incrementally. Let's abolish the pilot agreement that we have right now, and let's see if we can increase it by maybe $15 or $20 million annually. Give them time to catch up on their tax obligations. And I think if we do that, we'll create tens more millions of dollars to address some of the budget shortfalls that we have, and we can make sure that we actually make sure that these neighborhoods and the issues that we're discussing here, so many people have raised, are able to be addressed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Next up, we have Lorraine Arakat.
Good evening, Mayor Scott and members of the Board of Estimates. My name is Lorraine Arcott. I'm a Baltimore City taxpayer in District 9, an organizer with the With Us, For Us Coalition, and policy analyst with 1199 SEIU. As a labor union representing over 5,000 healthcare workers working and living here in Baltimore City, we are calling for a budget that invests in community wealth building initiatives that promote community ownership and democratic control of local businesses, housing, land, and commercial corridors. In contrast to traditional economic development, community wealth building places power and resources into the hands of the community. I want to commend Comptroller Bill Henry and his team for publishing a set of recommendations that sets the foundation for more fair and transparent pilot agreements in Baltimore City. It is long overdue that the pilot agreement between 11 hospitals and 4 universities are no longer behind closed doors, but negotiated through a public task force with community and labor stakeholders at the table. We are behind cities like Boston and New Haven, whose city leadership has demonstrated the importance of holding anchor institutions accountable in their cities. To reveal a contrast, Yale University alone is paying $45 million annually within their pilot, which is 9 times more than 15 of our institutions combined. Additionally, the Maryland Health Services Cost Review Commission just reported this past fall that nonprofit hospitals reporting community benefits are only meeting 37% of community health needs. We need processes in place that put the voices of workers and neighbors of these institutions to be at the forefront. For too long, community members trying to run cooperatives that pay living wages and land trusts trying to develop vacant land and affordable housing are fighting over crumbs to fund their initiatives. In Chicago, the mayor invested a landmark $15 million for community wealth building that has already shown remarkable strides in a robust economy that includes the city's most marginalized. It is up to city leadership to take the pilot agreement seriously as an important source of revenue for building thriving and innovative economies that put our low-income workers and residents first. Thank you.
Next up, we have Mr. Mike McGuire.
What's up, Mike?
Let's go, Mike.
Mike coming straight from the walk-off.
Yeah.
Mike's been hitting it for years.
What's happening, folks?
Did you see the walk-off, Mike?
What's that?
Did you see the walk-off?
I did. I heard it on the radio.
You missed it, all right.
Yeah, I was working.
Yeah.
In that regard, yep.
2 minutes, sir.
So I'm a taxpayer, I'm a voter, I'm an organizer. In terms of voting, I campaigned for you, Mayor Scott, and you, Comptroller Henry. Thank you for your service. First of all, just like one note, I think we need a more participatory budget process. And I look around and I'm guessing that we probably don't quite have 30 people here participating in a city of 600,000. And I know that we can do better than that. It's going to take some work. There are a lot of other priorities, but I know that we can do better than that. And it comes to, I was just trying to calculate it, it's like 1/10,000% of Baltimore City residents that are here to participate in the budget. So, and that's kind of, yeah, it's sad. That's a better word than I was going to use. But I don't have a whole lot to contribute. I want to join my voices with everyone that's spoken so far. I'm setting aside 3% of the bond issues. 3% of $125 million is barely scratches the surface of need of what we have in Baltimore City. And I'm talking about community institutions like Kim's Rec Center. I'm thinking about Arena Players. And it's $3.75 million that we're talking about if we were to fund it at 3%. And I'm a builder. I have 2 businesses in the city. I have a plumbing company and a general contracting company. So I know how little $3.75 million can do. I mean, the South Baltimore Community Land Trust is trying to build some passive house homes. Their budget is going to exceed that just in terms of building 16 units. But I mean, to replace all the seats at Arena Players, my guess is probably you're talking about $60,000 to $80,000, and that would be a game changer for them. And they struggle sometimes to pay their water bill. So setting this money aside, I think is really meaningful. And making an investment, and I vote in every election. I'm used to voting on bond issues. The stuff that I always remember are the zoo and the BMA. I want to see more investment in community institutions. I think these larger institutions are certainly fundamental to a healthy city, but these community institutions are just as necessary. So thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Nicole King.
Good evening. I'm Nicole King. I'm a taxpayer, educator, organizer, and a voter in Baltimore City. So new funds and capital bonds must be focused on community wealth building in historically redlined and disinvested neighborhoods, not wealthy developers and anchor institutions. Residents have endured broken promises and the slow violence of extractive redevelopment projects for decades in this city. Developers will not save the city. Residents will save the city. Thriving neighborhoods will save the city. Pilots, as my colleagues have said, payment in lieu of taxes currently allows 15 hospitals and universities in Baltimore to collectively pay only $6 million instead of the $110 million they own. I work at a university. TIFs, tax increment financing, a mechanism only allowed in Baltimore City since 2000, never used in Baltimore County, are now handed out like candy to wealthy outside developers. For example, in Poppleton, in 2015, the city approved a $58 million TIF for a private New York City developer, La Cité, with no community benefit agreement. The city gave the developer the right to develop the land back in 2005, and nothing but displacement and demolition happened. Nothing had been built in a decade, but the developer received $58 million TIF commitment. Now, almost another decade later, the only housing built is 2 luxury apartments with 260 units of housing. Only 53 are affordable housing. How does that make sense? In 2016, the city gave Rexford Science and Technology a $17.5 million TIF to expand the University of Maryland's biopark in West Baltimore, on top of UMB's pilot agreement. These uses of public funds do not serve residents who have had their neighborhoods frozen and disinvested in for decades for redevelopment projects designed from the start to displace them. We need to radically change the way the city budget works. I implore you to invest in us, the hardworking residents of Baltimore City. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. King. Next up, Margaret Chow. Margaret.
Here. Hello.
Hello.
I didn't know I was on the list to speak, but all right, so it's coming just off the dome. I am a taxpayer. I'm a member of Baltimore City, a resident, and I think this is all a charade. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that I am sitting up here in an intimidating room to a panel, a board of estimates that I have no idea, like, what you all are thinking about. And I am a resident here. I totally agree with what others have said, that this is a completely undemocratic structure and way to host a taxpayers night. If you're really serious about understanding what taxpayers want, how is this the format that makes any sense and would give any, I mean, you all have heard this thousands of times, and I think what I will do with the remainder of the 2 minutes is let everyone think about what what you really think would make a better city. Really think about it with the rest of the 2 minutes, because maybe you've never thought about it before. So I will sit up here and yield this time. Well, I'm not going to yield this time. I will take this time, but I want everyone to think about it. What would people actually want this money to go towards? Because it doesn't take a rocket scientist or a PhD to figure this out. Yeah.
Ms. Chow?
It's doctor, but I will,
Okay.
I'm actually, I'm going to take the 2 minutes, so if you
No,
wait.
I've-
to-
No, I have a question for you.
So you,
Oh.
Yeah,
hold
okay.
on, hold on 1 second. So you've yielded your time. What I did was I paused it. You have
Okay.
32 seconds left.
Okay.
But I think based off of, can everybody be quiet for a second? Based off of what you said, I think the comptroller has a question for you, but you'll still have 32 seconds once you answer his question, okay?
Okay.
So my question is, could you maybe use some of your time to tell us how you think a taxpayers night could be better run? Like, how could we get a better outcome than this one? Like, what would be some suggestions of how we could do it differently?
I mean, who knows about this except for the people who are paying attention to government? No one knows about this. I think, yeah, and I also think people coming here into this arena where we're asked to stand at a microphone and speak and testify is completely, I mean, who has the time on a weeknight to do this, and the capacity and the understanding, and also that we only get 2 minutes. I think it takes a lot more than 2 minutes for everyone here to share their ideas on what is necessary. So, yeah, I think you all should be out in communities, actually talking to people and hearing what people have to say. And listening, and not, I mean, and I also think, just to say that, the fact that it's asking you all, the board, to make these decisions for us on our behalf is, I think, not a system that's working for us, so.
Well, then we really probably should talk about the
That's what you're
competition
there
before.
for.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chow, for that. Next up, David Yaffe.
Good evening, members of the Board of Estimates and members of the public. Well, we've heard about crime and absenteeism and community. Now, the library is part of the solution to all of those things, in addition to all the things that are very well known that libraries do. I think the library is probably most people's favorite city agency. You hear a lot of complaints and, dealing with this agency and that agency, but very little, you hear nothing but praise for the library. You probably have noted that when bond issues come up, it gets more votes than any of the others. And yet, this proposed budget reduces funds from the current year by sort of a job freeze, by not filling some vacant positions. Now, for budget balancing purposes, the library's budget is not like other departments, really. It's one of the smaller ones. You certainly can't balance the city's budget on the back of the library. Moreover, there's a specific commitment relating to the library's budget resting upon an agreement between the city and the state. The state has allocated $3 million addition per year in order to keep all the library locations open on a full schedule. And together with that, the city has to commit an addition of about $750,000, if I remember the figure correctly. Now, in the forthcoming budget, however, this required increase coincides with the decrease of the job freeze. Now, state officials can quite justly judge that to be a shell game and a breach of the city's commitment to the state. If you're adding and subtracting at the same time, you're not adding the full required amount. To break the agreement can lead to forfeiting the $3 million from the state. I'm sure that you want to protect $3 million in state funds and also protect the Pratt Library's many valuable and cherished services to the public. And I didn't say it yet, but I'm speaking on behalf of the Friends of the Pratt Library, which has many members throughout the city and beyond the city.
Thank you, Mr. Yaffe. If you could begin to wrap up.
I did.
Okay, thank you so much. I truly appreciate you sticking with the time. Veronica Bell. Is Veronica Bell here? Going once, going twice, we'll circle back. Tisha Guthrie. Good evening, Ms. Guthrie.
Good evening. Glad to be here with my fellow residents. I would like to echo, of course, what Lorraine and Nikki or Nicole, both Nicoles have indicated with regards to the With Us For Us campaign. The status quo is old. It is definitely, this experiment has not worked. I really could speak about the American experiment, but we won't get there. But this microcosm of the American experiment is not working. This is not democracy. I'll highlight how greed is insatiable. The Hopkins institution, whether it's the medical institution or the university institution, has been allowed to grow and to expand its waistline. And those who have been in the stream or in the way of that institution, they have perished. At this point, the greed has become so insidious that it itself is starting to suffer. I sit on one of their advisory boards as a patient and as a family member. And at this point, they are reaching out to philanthropists because they do not have enough money in their coffers to pay for wheelchairs for the community. That is how greed eats itself, eats institutions. And so we are perpetuating this greed by allowing them to get away with paying us, the citizens, the residents, peanuts. Peanuts. They pay us peanuts while we sit by and allow them to expand. And then they're not even able to meet the needs of the community and the patients that they say they serve. So just think about that for a second. This city is allowing developers, institutions, anchor institutions to fail the people. They are growing and they are becoming too large to fail. That statement, that phrasing, doesn't just apply to financial institutions. It also applies to huge developers and these huge institutions that continue to extract from our city. It's up to us, it's up to you guys to hold them accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Guthrie. Next and last in-person speaker I have is Vaughn Vega.
How you doing, gentlemen? How you doing?
How you doing, sir?
How you doing? Good. My name is Ben Vega from Puerto Rico, born in Puerto Rico. I love this city. That's why I'm here. I'm a music artist in this city, and I'm also a representative of the Latin people in this city. For over a decade, I have been deeply involved in supporting hundreds of Latin immigrant families in Baltimore City. Throughout these 12 years, I have witnessed firsthand the challenges forced by children dealing with bullying and the struggles of parents grappling with their children's mental health concerns within the school system. After considerable reflection, it has become evident that a significant gap exists in parental involvement and understanding of their children's educational experiences beyond the home environment. Furthermore, there is clear need for schools to enhance their communication with parents to foster a more supportive educational environment. To address these pressing issues, I propose the creation of STEERUS, an innovative online educational platform designed to serve as more than just a repository for courses. STEERUS will provide a comprehensive solution by delivering school announcements, meeting schedules, and crucial community updates in video format accessible to both American and Latin parents. By ensuring timely and accessible information, we can empower parents to actively engage with their children's education and school activities. Additionally, STEERUS will facilitate a more inclusive school environment by implementing measures to support Latin families and enhance their integration in the educational system. This includes initiatives such as job search capabilities within the platform to assist parents in securing employment opportunities. Moreover, STEERUS would like to introduce features such as live stream classes, enabling parents to monitor their children's progress and involvement in real time. By fostering greater transparency and involvement, we aim to strengthen the relationship between schools and families, ultimately enhancing student success. Investing in STEERUS represents not only a cost-effective solution, but also a strategic opportunity to drive lasting positive change within Baltimore City.
Mr. Vega, if you could begin to wrap up.
By bridging the gap between schools and Latin families, we can create a more inclusive and supportive educational ecosystem, laying the foundation for a brighter future for all residents. I am Van Vega, and I am confident that STEERUS represents the future of online education and community engagement. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Vega. We're going to circle back. Is Ms. Veronica Bell, is she here? Going once, going twice. We're going to now go over to our virtual. If you could please unmute Ms. Mary Hughes. She's tuned in from the Friends of Gwynns Falls Parkway. Can you see her? Is she unmuted?
Mary has to click it on.
Ms. Mary, if you could unmute yourself, if you can hear us. It's Ms. Mary Hughes. She's still muted. Yes, Ms. Hughes, you're going to have to unmute your...
I'm so sorry, I was having problems unmuted.
You don't have to be sorry at all. You have 2 minutes.
2 minutes, and I won't take that long at all. Good evening to everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk this evening. I guess I would agree with, I think it was Dr. Chow. I wish there were a better way in which there could be a way to testify on such an important thing as what we're talking about. But this is the avenue that has been presented to us. All I'm going to say is this. I trust my elected officials to do what's right for the residents. Unfortunately, in the past, that has not been done. All I'm asking is that you would take us in consideration with what we're going to do with the tax dollars and the way they're going to be distributed and how they will help the residents of Baltimore City, not special interest groups, not developers, but we, the residents, who gladly live in this city and stay in this city and support it with our tax dollars. I'm depending on each and every one of you to do the right thing by the testimony that has been presented tonight, and the right thing to the residents who are sticking by this city, regardless of the challenges that we have, to bring this city up to the level that we know it can be. And that's all I wanted to say. And I just thank you for that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hughes. Now, if we could unmute Jennifer Coons from Clean Water Action. Jennifer, you have to unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you so much. Jennifer Kunze, Clean Water Action here from East Baltimore, and I'm here to comment on the solid waste budget. I was really, what, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
Floor is yours.
Great. I was really disappointed reading the capital budget to see no investment all the way through 2030 in recycling and composting infrastructure for our municipal waste stream. There is the C&D project, which is good and needed, but this budget completely fails to invest in reuse, recycling, and composting infrastructure. Last year's final capital budget, as passed, projected investing in more composting infrastructure starting in 2028 and in more recycling infrastructure starting in 2029. But what's in front of you right now for this year has zero funding for either of those items all the way through 2030. That timeline brings us so close to the end of the city's current contract with Bresco in 2031. Are we just going to not build any zero waste infrastructure other than the East Side compost facility that's already being funded by a federal grant between now and 2030? We cannot afford to decide to close the deficit by cutting out the city's commitment to making sure the current contract with Bresco is the city's last. We need to be investing real money and the city's own money in zero waste infrastructure. And then on the flip side, I wanted to add that I support and appreciate the planning department's changes to the rail transfer project budget. They said that the project should be studied first to see if it's a good investment, and they actually added funding for FY25 to do that. And that's smart. It would be wrong and it would be fiscally irresponsible to prioritize building a long-haul transfer station for our trash to ship it to be someone else's problem before investing, and right now we're not even investing, in reduction and diversion infrastructure. We need to invest in recycling, composting, and reuse for our waste to handle it here first and create good green zero waste jobs to manage it here in Baltimore first. So I hope that rail transfer study happens, and I hope the public has the opportunity to meaningfully participate in figuring out its conclusions. So please invest in zero waste infrastructure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up, we're going to go to Melissa Schober. If you could please unmute yourself. On deck, we have Ayanna Bass-Myers and Kareem Jackson. Right now, Ms. Melissa Schober, if you could please unmute yourself and begin to speak.
Yes, thank you. So briefly, two issues tonight. In July 2021, at a hearing convened by Councilman Conway, the BPD responded to recommendations made in a biennial performance audit to resolve issues dating back to FY16. 5 of the recommendations related to implementing policies and procedures for measuring, reporting, and validating performance measures. At that July 2021 hearing, each of those recommendations was listed as in progress. 3 years later, no information related to that progress has been released. Until and unless the BPD can publicly document processes for securely collecting, storing, and validating performance measures, calling this budget performance-based is at best a PR strategy built on sand and at worst a knowing lie. 2. MOCFS is slated to receive a significant increase in general funds from $2.6 million to $3.25 million. What justifies this increase? This office is supposed to manage the application process for appointed school board seats. 2 of those seats have been vacant since at least June 2023, and interviews to fill them did not begin until December, even as the state statute calls for vacancies to be filled in 60 days. In addition, the office violated the Open Meetings Act in operating the task force to study school board compensation. It has not updated the agendas or minutes for the trauma-informed task force since December of 2022. None of the Youth Data Hub agendas or minutes created by statute are available online, which also is subject to OMA. Agencies that routinely and repeatedly fail to comply with the Open Meetings Act should not receive budgetary increases when they fail to participate in transparent processes established in state law. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As discussed, next up we have Ayanna Bass-Myers. If you could please unmute yourself. On deck we have Kareem Jackson. Right now, Ms. Ayanna Bass-Myers, the floor is yours. She's not on? We do not see you on the list. Yeah, just in case there might be one as a phone number or something, we're still going to go down the list. It seems like the remaining names we cannot find on the screen, but we're still going to go down all the remaining names that signed up. Next up, Kareem Jackson. If you're on, please unmute yourself and begin to speak. Okay, next up, we have Caroline Carey and Millie Rice. Caroline Carey and Millie Rice. If you are on, please unmute yourself and begin to speak. Okay, moving on. Next up, Ardelia Huntley Wilson. Ardelia Huntley Wilson and Jamie Pope. If you are on, please unmute yourself and begin to speak. And then last and certainly not least, we have Daryl Ford. Daryl Ford, if you could unmute yourself. Okay, that concludes the virtual list. We do have a request, and just in full transparency, if someone would like to provide their testimony via the chat, you can copy and paste and put whatever you would like to put into the chat. You can also email us the information if you have access to email at testimony@baltimorecity.gov. Before we conclude, they're able to speak now? Yeah, she's able to speak. Okay, we're going to go to Terry Sims. Terry Sims, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
If you have 2 minutes.
All right. Thanks for the opportunity to speak.
No problem.
I just want to say, well, for the last 2 years, I've been like a fly on the wall. I've been watching pretty much every city council meeting that you guys been having. I know who shows up to meetings. I know who don't. I know who is doing their job, and I know who's not. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into this conversation, but because I only got 2 minutes, I want to directly address the Dollar House program that you guys have implemented. Nick Mosby, I think you are absolutely correct for voting no on that bill. It does nothing for actual Baltimoreans. As of right now, there are, as of last reported, there are 360 applicants. Only 62, I believe, were Baltimoreans. And I think that is like, it's more gentrification of Baltimore. It's outside people that's going to come into Baltimore and be allowed to redevelop and own property and do what they want. When we put y'all in position to get Baltimoreans in better position. You see what I'm saying? This is why a lot of people are moving out the city. It's not just because of the crime, it's because of the property taxes. It's because it's a lot of things that's going opposite for regular Baltimoreans. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of displacement happening with the gentrification. But I just want to say that I think you guys need to be doing a little bit more for actual Baltimoreans. I think the original Dollar House bill that has been on the website since at least 2022 was accurate. I don't know what the problem was with that. I think y'all thought it had too much to do with Baltimoreans, and y'all felt as though other people should be able to allow to come in. But I think it was correct in its original form. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. Is there anybody else that is here that would like to present that has not had an opportunity? Is that a hand raise? Yes, if you could please make your way. Is there anyone else? I asked this at the beginning. Would you like to speak as well? So we have one right here, second right there. Is there anyone else while we are formulating the end of this meeting? Okay, well, we're going to allow you 2 minutes to speak. Please state your name, where you are joining us from, and then begin your testimony.
My name is Brittany Mackey, and I am a resident of Baltimore County, and I've been in the city for approximately 6 years, and I got a chance to interact with parents and their children for education, and I had an awesome experience. Your city kids are truly awesome. And I was entertaining the fact that I was going around trying to figure out why is it so strong for young folks not to be successful in school and hook school. So in Baltimore County, I took part in visual learners and Head Start programs. TVs was placed inside a Baltimore County public school system. And it's very relaxed, enjoyable for the students to have. So in the city, I was challenging auto learning and part of their lesson plan. I feel like these kids are good at seeing, but more so not really comprehending what they're seeing. So I'm into the budget in Baltimore City with auto learning. Don't want to be so harsh on the taxpayer, more so entertaining, more so the White House being part of auto learning. I feel like if a child read a book, it's more detailed. And auto learning is going to give you the idea of the book. So they're able to comprehend better. So I'm real strong about auto learning in Baltimore City. I feel like they will grasp it better. So that's one thing that I've been saying part of the budget in Baltimore City. And also I've been working with parents, co-parenting, and letting parents know, hey guys, if a man paid child support, he do get credit back. So I want to make sure these men get their credit back and for us child support, because that's very serious. It could be a straining burden on both parties. So I want parents to know that your child is a blessing, and investment is something that you can consider your child.
Thank you so much.
And the mom can also be, the children can be that dependent, and the father can use the same child as a credit. So we don't want the parents to fight. We want strong, healthy community.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
That's what I've been into.
I appreciate you presenting in front of us today. And then, yes, the last testimony will come from, if you could please state your name and organization you're coming from.
My name is Rachel Gadsden. I work for the South Baltimore Community Land Trust. I'm also a PhD student in political science at Johns Hopkins.
Oh, wow.
And recently a Baltimore City homeowner.
Oh, cool. You mind telling us the neighborhood?
Darley Park.
Darley Park, East Side. There we go. All right.
Yeah, really excited.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. So through SBCLT, we are members of the WUFU Coalition, working on creating a community wealth building fund in the city. And I can say that as someone who attends Hopkins and works for a community organization, they have the money. We need the money. There should be more money moving in that direction. It's really simple.
You're the glue.
Yeah, 100%. It's simple in that way. The best work that I can do in the city is with the Land Trust. Even though I'm learning a lot from my program, it is the community organizations like this that are actually doing the work. So building housing is expensive. Tom that was here mentioned that. Yeah, it's expensive, but it's particularly expensive because we're building based on what people actually need. So development looks different when you are doing what your community is asking for versus what your metrics tell you will be the most profitable investment. And we're not the only ones, right? There are groups all over the city that do the work of bringing neighbors together to deliberate and decide how they want to improve their communities. But these groups are underfunded and they don't have to be. It's hard to get things done if you don't have an operating budget, or if you are working between small grant that adds up to 2 homes, 3 homes, right? We don't have the massive investment that these for-profit developers have. So I want to connect that to participatory budgeting because I loved hearing that topic come up. Thanks, Meg. There are ways to make this process democratic. Participatory budgeting, as I'm sure plenty of you know, is a tradition that came out of Brazil. It has been implemented in several countries worldwide. It's also been implemented in some American cities. There's a lab at, I think it might be Brown, at a university where they study this specifically, they offer support to create these systems, and that would allow the city to take this budgeting process and tap into these networks that your community organizations have created and use them to actually deliberate with people. Because I don't think there's anything harder than like knowing you only have 2 minutes to explain why you love your city, what you want to see it become, how you want to make it happen, and what you need to do that. But what if we all just sat down in a room together and actually had those conversations? Because plenty of us are doing it in the community, right? You're just not there to hear them.
Begin to wrap up.
I'm good.
You good? All right. Thank you so much. Before I close this out, are there any comments, questions, or concerns from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, I would like to thank everyone for joining us. If we could please hold on. I would like to thank everyone for joining us this evening, whether you came in person or you were able to participate in this process virtually. The board sincerely appreciates your participation and civic engagement. From here, the budget process will continue. The next steps of the budget are as follows. The Bureau of Budget Management and Research will, in the next few weeks, present the proposed ordinance of estimates for fiscal year 2025 to the Board of Estimates, along with any recommendations or amendments or adjustments. The proposed ordinance of estimates is scheduled to be sent to the Baltimore City Council on May 1st, where we'll undergo additional public vetting for processing. In the last half of May and early June, the council will hold public hearings with city agencies on those agencies' proposed budgets. The city council will then host its own Taxpayers Night, which will take place on May the 16th. Please mark your calendars for that. The full list of Taxpayers Nights and city council budget hearings will be announced at the upcoming city council meeting and will be posted on the public on our website at www.baltimorecitycouncil.com. At this time, again, I would like to thank all my colleagues of the board for joining us tonight. We'd like to thank everyone who took the time to express their questions, concerns, comments, and participate in civic engagement here at City Hall. Please know that there's still much work to do on this budget. The budgets are always the values, and I look forward to moving to the next phase of this budget process to the City Council. Again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for participating. Baltimore, we absolutely love you.